Well, it's great to be back after a week mental health break, a little vacation, and I know a lot of folks are starting school back. And of course, we had Black Hat and DEF CON, so lots to talk about in this episode of the Cybersecurity Whisperer for the week of August 18th. First, we talk a lot about password managers on this show, and I certainly encourage you to use them. I always advertise them at the trainings that I do. I personally have used them for many, many years. Obviously, they are a prime target for the bad guys because they do store passwords. Hopefully, if you're using one that's well architected, it's encrypted, and the encryption keys are not stored by the provider, but you are the only one that has them. Nonetheless, if you use 1Password on Macs, those have specifically been targeted recently. If you're using any version before 8.10.36, you need to patch your 1Password on the Mac. That version is vulnerable to an attack where the bad guys can steal vault items. So the bad guys would have to develop and install a specific program on the victim's machine that targeted 1Password through social engineering or other means, and they'd have to run malicious software. And when they did that, they would be able to misuse missing macOS specific interprocess validations to hijack or impersonate a trusted 1Password integration, such as the browser extension or the command line. Now here's some good news. Interesting that there's some security bugs were found in ransomware leak sites that actually helped save 6 companies from paying hefty ransoms. A security researcher, again, he was able to use these sites in part thanks to rookie security flaws found in the web infrastructure on these ransomware gang sites. And for example, 2 companies received the decryption keys to unscramble their data without having to pay the ransom, and 4 hacked crypto companies were alerted before the ransomware gang could even begin encrypting their files, making rare wins for the targeted victim organization. So the security researcher was also the chief technology officer at Atropos.ai. He set out on a research project to identify the command and control servers behind over 100 ransomware and extortion-focused groups and their leak sites. And the aim was to identify flaws that could be used to unmask information about the gangs themselves, including the victims. And, of course, he revealed this at Black Hat in Vegas. He found several simple vulnerabilities in the web dashboards used by at least 3 different ransomware gangs, and that was enough to compromise the inner workings of the operations themselves. And so, again, these were coding errors and security bugs on the leak sites, of which these gangs used to extort their victims by publishing their stolen files, and it allowed the researcher to peek inside without having to log in and extract information about each operation. And in some cases, the bugs exposed the IP address of the leaked site servers, which could be used to trace their real-world locations. And just some of the bugs included were they were using default password for accessing its backend SQL databases and exposing its files directory, exposed API endpoints that revealed the targets of the ransomware gang's attacks while in progress. And and so again, the researcher told the interview that 2 of the victims were small businesses and the other 4 were crypto companies, and 2 of them were considered unicorns, startups with valuations over $1 billion. But he did not name the companies, and he said that none of the companies he notified has publicly disclosed the incidents, and he didn't rule out disclosing the names of the companies in the future. I'm assuming if they don't, go to the SEC or announce it themselves. And the FBI and other government authorities have long advocated victims of ransomware to not pay to prevent the malicious actors from profiting from their cyber attacks. But again, some of these companies, they have no option. Otherwise, they would go out of business. There's something interesting that I think we talked about, and it hits super close to home because it's right here in Nashville, Tennessee, where I'm located. The U.S. dismantles a laptop farm used by undercover North Korean IT workers. We talked about this from KnowBe4 when they went public with it. But the U.S. Justice Department did arrest a Nashville man charged with helping North Korean IT workers obtain remote work at companies across the U.S. and operating a laptop farm that was used to pose as U.S.-based individuals, and his name is Matthew Knut. He's 38, and again, he helped North Koreans use a stolen identity to pose as Andrew M., a U.S. citizen, provided housing for company-provided laptops, and he helped launder payments for the remote IT workers to both North Korean and Chinese accounts. See, the victim companies would ship their laptops addressed to Andrew M. to his address in Nashville, and when he received them, he would then log on to them, download and install unauthorized remote desktop apps, and then access the victim company's networks, causing damage to the computers. The remote applications enabled the North Korean IT workers to work from locations in China, but it appeared to the victim companies that Andrew M. was working from Nashville. And so again, the North Korean IT workers used his laptop farm and generated revenue for North Korea's nuclear weapons program and were each paid over $250,000 for their work between July of 22 and August of 23. And Newt is now facing multiple charges, including wire fraud, intentional damage to protected computers, aggravated identity theft, conspiracy to cause the unlawful employment of aliens. He could be sentenced to a maximum of 20 years in prison if found guilty. Here's another interesting one. Hackers have gained access to a GPS tracker tool that exposed user locations. So a hacker recently managed to break into an internal tool at a GPS tracking company called Trackamo, allowing them to look up users' locations. And no, this isn't about the tile breach that we talked about many years ago. This is a different one. And it is a trend, unfortunately. Here's what went down. A hacker who goes by the name of Maria Arson Crime W got access to Trackamo's internal troubleshooting tool. They found an email with the tool's password, and they used it to search not just their own device's location history, but others as well. So Trackamo, in case you didn't know, sells GPS trackers for everything from family members to fleet vehicles, but apparently their internal support system wasn't as secure as you'd hope. According to this researcher, the tool had just one easily guessable password, which they described as pretty bad. I would guess it's probably password. And so they shared screenshots, and it displayed recent device locations on a Google Maps-like interface. It even showed the associated email addresses, names, phone numbers of the users, along with diagnostic data like how often the device rebooted or if it was low on battery. So certainly not good there if you use them for a GPS. And this is just some of the risks that we all face when we use GPS maps. We also want to talk about CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike blamed a mismatch in their Falcon sensor for the global IT outage. So they gave a little more information. They said in their root cause analysis report that their Falcon sensor expected 20 input fields in a rapid response content update, but the software update actually provided 21 input fields. So it seems like kind of like a standard, SQL injection when it's not expecting it. The mismatch resulted in an out-of-bounds memory read, leading to the system crash. And so their CEO said, hey, they're using lessons learned from the incident to better serve our customers, and they've already taken decisive steps to prevent the situation from repeating and to help ensure that they are even more resilient. So certainly we hope that's the case. Next, we've talked about the human element of cybersecurity and how important it is, and asking the question, are cybersecurity professionals okay? After the adrenaline wears off of a cyber attack, the feeling that can wash over security professionals can, some authors have described as by Jackson Brown's 77 hit, The Loadout. It's a 32-second long piano ballad precedes a crooning Brown who goes on to sing a tribute to his roadies and his fans. He says, now the seats are all empty, let the roadies take the stage, pack it up and tear it down. And we talked, in this article to a threat intelligence analyst at Recorded Future, and they said, look, it's the perfect description for the aftermath of a security incident. Suddenly the incident response teams are gone, the lawyers are gone, the insurance company's gone, and now you have to put your network back together and rebuild security. So you've got the highs and the lows of incident response and the recovery manifest, this gloomy state of mind for many security professionals. So how do you find an outlet, space, and time to unwind? It's really critical. You've got to have that separation, or this job, it really could kill you, literally. So to release tension and break away from the often chaotic work of cybersecurity, defenders have to get creative, and you've got to exhibit practice and intention. And so, some people's outlets of choice, writing comic books. This allows you to create characters that get to punish the ransomware criminals. But cybersecurity work is stressful, and it's extremely nerve-wracking, stressful way to make a living. You've got alerts flagging potentially malicious attacks. They're constant, and they have to be taken seriously because every defender reluctantly knows attacks will happen. It's just a matter of when. And on top of all that, consider the insider's perspective and insight that they have into the personal threats criminals will make to extract a ransom payment from their victim. There's no honor among thieves. Defenders who are doing well at work and in their personal lives have to recognize behaviors and circumstances that can throw them off course. Working all the time without breaks or meaningful distractions from the torrent of malicious activity is a surefire way to burn out, or at least undercut the ability to perform at a high level. And so, real quick, we want to summarize some of the Black Hat things that chatted at Black Hat. So, we one of the researchers talked about breaching AWS from Aqua Security. Presented 6 critical vulns that discovered in AWS. They had all been reported and patched, but they had the potential to allow external hackers to breach almost any AWS account. So something certainly to watch over there. Then there was Cloud Imposer. Researchers from Tenable They walked through a critical RCE dubbed Cloud Imposer, and this was for Google Cloud or GCP customers workloads. And the flaw affected millions of cloud servers before it was discovered and resolved, stemmed from one simple faulty command argument. And finally, Windows Downdate. This is they call it the Black Lotus UEFI bootkit, downgraded the Windows Boot Manager to bypass secure boot. These downgrade attacks, such as Black Lotus, they force software to revert to an older, vulnerable version of itself. And security researchers at SafeBreach discovered that Windows updates could be similarly hacked to force a downgrade of the software on Windows PCs. The researchers were able to show that attacks carried out using this approach could be crafted to bypass verification steps performed during updates, including integrity verification and trusted installer enforcement. And so, according to the research, the tactic, it turns fixed vulnerabilities into 0 days while making the term fully patched meaningless. So, something to certainly be on the lookout for. Again, like, subscribe, send us your questions, and we thank you for following. See you next week.